This second generation Volvo XC60 has been with us since 2018. That's quite a long time. In 2022, it did receive a bigger battery, a bump in power, a new infotainment system, and a slight tweak to the exterior styling. And now for 2026, it gains a few more upgrades. What are they? Well, let's go for a drive and find out. Not much has changed with the powertrain of the 2026 Volvo XC60 T8. It's still powered by a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, and it still uses a couple of electric motors helping it out. Just like before, there is no drive shaft connecting the front and rear wheels. It's only an electric motor that powers the back wheels, and the engine powers the front wheels. Combined, they still produce 455 horsepower and 523 pound-feet of torque. Volvo says that this heavy SUV will accelerate from a stop to 100 kilometers an hour in just under 5 seconds. And I do believe them, because this SUV really does feel fast. That is, if you can put the power down. From a stop under full throttle acceleration, the front wheels do spin because they are overwhelmed by the power of the engine. And on top of that, this demo car does have winter tires, so they don't provide as much grip as all-season or summer tires. But either way, my point is, this is a really fast SUV for not being a performance-oriented SUV. The battery is still the same size at 18.8 kilowatt hours, and it still provides the same amount of EV-only driving range, 58 kilometers. I've only been able to squeeze 53 kilometers of range out of a full charge, but that was with climate control running at all times, and the ambient temperature was hovering at around 10 degrees Celsius. The last time that I drove the XC60 T8, I managed to squeeze 55 kilometers of range, so still within the same ballpark figure. Recharging the battery takes about 5 hours from a level 2 charger, and you can't charge it from a level 3 DC charger like some other luxury PHEVs like the Mercedes GLC. It does use regen braking to recoup a little bit of energy, and this XC60 does have a one-pedal mode. Simply switch the drive selector into B and then make sure that you turn off the creep function in the infotainment system, and then it becomes a one-pedal mode. And speaking of modes, it does have a few different drive modes to choose from. By default, it'll start in the auto hybrid drive mode, in which case it'll try to use electricity for as long as possible, so long as you are not too aggressive on the throttle. If you push too hard on the throttle, then the engine will start. You can also set in the infotainment system to have the SUV start in the pure drive mode. In this mode, it uses only electricity, and even if you push the throttle all the way down, it'll remain in the electric-only mode. There's also power, which will turn on the engine and keep it running at all times. There's an off-road mode, which will deactivate if you go past 50 kilometers an hour or so. And there's a constant all-wheel drive mode, which will constantly send power to the back wheels. You can, of course, also tell the car to hold the battery charge or recharge the battery. If you hold the battery charge, then the XC60 behaves almost like a traditional hybrid vehicle. So at slower speeds, say under 30 kilometers an hour or so, the electric motor provides movement for the SUV. But beyond that, the engine does turn on. You can stay at a constant speed just by gently pressing on the throttle, but you have to be so very gentle on that throttle, because otherwise, if you push just a tiny bit too hard, then the engine fires up right away. So that's why I say it's not quite the same as a traditional hybrid like a Toyota Prius or Toyota Highlander hybrid or something like that. Because in those vehicles, you can still accelerate even at higher speeds just using electricity, albeit you have to be very gentle with the throttle as well, but not as gentle as with this SUV. On top of that, the fuel economy is not great in this mode or when the battery is depleted. Officially, it's rated for 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and on a highway when you're in the hold battery mode or completely drained of a battery charge. And that's also what I've been noticing when I've been driving it with a completely depleted battery. But if you switch the car to the charge mode and get the engine to charge up the battery while you're driving on highways, you'll use up a little bit more fuel because that keeps the engine running at all times, even if you come to a complete stop. And I don't think it's that beneficial because you use up more fuel by recharging the battery than you save by having a little bit of charge from charging up the battery. So it's best to just leave the battery depleted and don't use that charge mode. Instead, charge up the XC60 like a normal PHEV by plugging it in. On a winding mountain road, the Volvo XC60 is not particularly engaging to drive. The steering is light and artificial feeling. You can make it firmer through a setting in the infotainment system, but it's not the same as the steering in the BMW X3 M50, for example. But at least this SUV is easy to drive around town, and it's not going to stress you out. This particular demo vehicle came equipped with the optional air suspension. For the most part, the suspension effectively absorbs bigger potholes and bumps in the road. However, it's smaller, quick road imperfections that get translated through the suspension and into the seat. At times, the ride of the XC60 with the air suspension is not as plush as the ride of the Genesis GV70, for example, but at least the air suspension does allow for easy entry and exit by lowering when stopped. As for noises, the cabin of the XC60 T8 is quiet. Obviously, when the electric motor is providing the power, there's only a faint whisper of tire noise that is audible in the car. When the engine has to turn on, the transition is seamless. As well, the engine itself is pretty quiet when it's not working too hard. Under more moderate or hard acceleration, it can get noisy. The interior of the 2026 XC60 looks pretty much the same as the previous model year, apart from the new infotainment touchscreen. This is one of the updates for this 2026 model year. It still runs a Google-based infotainment system, so you have Google Maps and Google Assistant built in, but there are fewer menu items in the infotainment system. So in a way, they have simplified it, but on the other hand, they did take away a few other controls. However, it still does integrate the climate controls into this touchscreen, just like the previous versions of Volvo infotainment systems. So it can get a little bit distracting if you try to change the temperature while you're driving, especially if you're driving over a rougher road, because then your finger is going to be bouncing up and down. But thankfully, with this infotainment system, you can just press the button on the steering wheel and use voice commands to change the temperature or to turn on the heated or ventilated seats. But as I said, the rest of the interior is exactly the same as it was before. There are soft to the touch materials almost everywhere, and Volvo does like to raise the carpet right up to almost the top of the center console. This reduces the amount of hard, scratchy plastics that there are, and instead it does feel a little bit better and a little bit more premium. However, they still are resorting to using gloss black on the center console, and as you know, this material attracts fingerprints, smudges, dust, scratches, so it doesn't look good after a short period of time, never mind a long period of time. But as for interior space, there's plenty of it for my 6'4" height up here in the front, plenty of legroom and plenty of headroom, but I did lower the seat to its lowest position. Visibility around the car is equally good, and you can option the XC60 with a rear camera mirror. Also, the view at the back is pretty good, and you do have the control to fold down the rear headrests. That allows for a slightly more unobstructed view out the back. So overall, very familiar up here in the front. New infotainment system is the only update to this 2026 model year, and overall still feels like a Volvo, not unlike the EX90 or EX40. You can check out those reviews in the video description. But beyond that, let's go check out the back seats. Space in these back seats is a little bit tight for somebody as tall as me behind my tall driving position. My knees are digging into the back of the front seats, and unfortunately they're made out of hard plastic instead of soft leather. But I have plenty of space for my feet, even though this seat is at its lowest position, and I have just enough headroom. If you are relegated to the center seat, you thankfully don't sit that much higher up than you do in the outboard seats. That's usually not the case in some other vehicles, but you do have to deal with a pretty sizable hump in the center. With this being a plug-in hybrid, the cargo capacity has not taken a big hit when compared to the non-PHEV versions of the XC60. It has 598 liters of space with the rear seats up, which is only 15 liters less than the non-hybrid XC60. With the rear seats folded, it only has 1,395 liters, which again is less than the non-hybrid version, but quite a bit less than the BMW X3 and Mercedes GLC. If equipped with the air suspension though, the rear can lower for easier loading or unloading of the trunk. The 2026 Volvo XC60 with the plug-in hybrid powertrain starts at just under $65,000 Canadian. This is the Ultra trim and it starts at $83,200 Canadian. That is before any sort of packages, options, and of course fees and taxes. Now at the time that I'm filming this video, BMW and Audi don't have plug-in hybrid versions of the X3 and the Q5, but Mercedes-Benz does with the GLC 350e, and I previously did a review of that one, which you can check out up there if you're interested. But compared to the GLC 350e, this XC60 has a lower starting price. For the lower price tag, the XC60 doesn't skimp out on convenience features. It has soft Nappa leather upholstery, heated and ventilated front seats, heated rear seats, heated steering wheel, panoramic sunroof, hands-free power liftgate, surround view cameras, head-up display, pilot assist semi-autonomous driving, blind spot sensors, Bowers & Wilkins audio system, and many more features. It can also be equipped with front massaging seats for $1,300 Canadian dollars or $600 US, but this demo car did not have this feature. On the outside, the front of the 2026 Volvo XC60 has the most distinct change when compared to the 2025 model year. It has a new grille, and there are new wheel designs that range from 20 inches to 22 inches. Other than that, the front bumper looks the same as before, as does the rear fascia. In the end, the updates to the 2026 XC60 are not quite as significant as they were back in 2022. They're more so just little tweaks to keep this car relevant in today's market. Yes, it has been around for quite some time, but thanks to the elegant design both outside and inside, it still looks very fresh. Sure, it doesn't have quite the same EV driving range as newer luxury PHEVs like the Mercedes-Benz GLC and the forthcoming X3 and Q5, but it is a very powerful powertrain, and with over 50 kilometers of EV-only driving range, I still think it's pretty good for daily use. In the meantime, if you would like to know more about this 2026 Volvo XC60, I have a more detailed written review of it over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up here. And as always, I will see you in the next car, truck, or most likely another SUV. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and see you in the next one.